So we left off in refactoring all the parameters and utilizing quargs, keyword arguments, just to clean up the code a little bit. Now we're going to move the classes into a class folder. So as your application scales, file structure is extremely important, and you're gonna, in the coming week, you're gonna see more and more files and directories in your applications. So, recording. So how do I make a new directory, John?
So you import the.
If I want to make a new classes directory.
Oh, from the command.
Yeah.
Okay. Then you'd mkdir from the directory you want to add it to mkdir, and then you give it a name. Yeah.
What do they say? Make a class directory, classes directory. Okay. Cool. So I've got a classes directory in the terminal. If you look at classes, we have the data that has our data, and then we have the person, school, staff, student. We have the runner file.
Mm-hmm.
If I wanted to move a person file into the classes directory from the command line, do you know how to do that? Does anybody know how to do that?
NV, the file name, and then the directory where you want it to go.
So NV person, I'm gonna list. So I've got the person. I'm gonna move this file into the classes from the command line. Okay. So move the person file and then the name of the directory. Now I'm gonna ls. So that's just a quick way to do that. Or we can just,
NV space S star space classes.
So now our directory looks like we have classes that stores our person class, school class, staff, student. We have the data, which stores our data, our CSV file. Then we have the runner. Let's run the runner. Let's see what happens. Python runner. Oh no. From school, import school. No module found. Interesting. So I just moved from school. Where's import school? So it's looking in the current directory, which is the school interface, and it can't find the school file anymore. School file has moved to classes. So does anybody know how I access the school file?
Would be classes.school.
What was that, Michael?
Classes.school. Classes would be the directory.
Classes.school. So I'm from the runner, it's going into the classes directory over here,
Okay.
and then it's accessing the school, where'd it go? School file. So let's run this again, see if that worked. Awesome, cool. So move classes into folders, we're good. Now we're gonna be loading the data. So in our previous challenge, we loaded the data from the words from the word guest, but now we need to load the staff and student data. So let's read through what it says. Read over. So student class will be in charge of taking care of our students database. So right here, the student class will be in charge of taking or talking to our student database. So it says write a method, all students, that returns an array of student objects that represent each row in the student's CSV file. So each row, student object. So I'm guessing this is going to have to be an object that represents each row, each of one of these rows.
That pointer object, that the kind of object.
We'll get to it.
Oh,
The way that an object is represented is as a pointer to the location of the object.
So our student class will be in charge of talking to the database. So we're going to write an all students method. Where is this all students method going to exist? In the student,
The student file, the student class.
okay. So this, whoa. So def all students self. Now, is all students going to take in any parameters? Because what's the objective of this all students method? Just to return a list of all students. So we don't need to pass in anything special or nothing like that. So how do we go about loading all the students from the student CSV? Close that. So what do I first need to do to work with CSVs? I need to import CSV. Okay.
Also in the instructions, it says you have to import OS.
I remember. Yeah.
Okay. Right. You'll need to also import OS path as well as OS path join from there. So let's just copy this over here.
You also set it to import.
Yep. So I'm importing the OS path and OS path join. But what it doesn't say is I also need to import the OS library, which is, so let's just actually, let's print. What is this? My path. I don't know what that does. It's interesting. So I'm going to list, I'm going to CD into the classes. ls, and I'm going to run this student Python file without actually invoking any student class, because I just want to see what this is. See what the my path and path, what that prints out. So I'm going to Python student. Okay, I still got a dictionary coming in somewhere. Where's that coming in at? Anyway. Where's that? Was that in person? I'm just deleting that printout. So let's run this again. Down here in the terminal, Python student. See what happened? I printed out the my path down here. And then the path join. So it's joining the my path, and it's also appending this data.students. So this path is the location of where the student data is located at, with relative, like within my computer, within my local machine.
Is this something you're commonly going to
No, because the data won't be stored on your local machine. It'll be actually stored in a database in a server in AWS or Azure, Microsoft Azure. But for all intents and purposes of this challenge, we're storing our data within a file. So I'm going to uncomment out the student class. Now, how do I go about importing all this data, accessing this data?
They actually started you on the behavior. You put that back in the
So back here.
one more line of code.
All right, cool. Hint OS path, and great. So we saw this before from our previous challenge. So when this method is called at some point, it's gonna, with open, let's look back at the lecture. So we usually have import with open, the name of the file as CSV, but now we're doing open the path, the absolute path to the file, because it's not in the same directory. Because the data isn't in the same directory. Like it has to go up a level and then go into data. So the absolute path to the data as CSV file. Now, how do I read it as a dictionary? What does it say? Or as an object, array of student objects. So what's my next step?
You can call it whatever you want to call it.
So
Student
reader,
Maybe tick readers.
like this.
CSV.
Yeah, CSV.
CSV dot.
As whatever you call it, it's just CSV file.
Kind of want to change that. I want to say like student CSV. Oh. So I just want to print each student right now. So how do I access each row and print just this? Was it for, would it be role or for student? Print student. Now I want to run this and see what happens. How do I?
So just whatever you want to do.
Can I just
Capital student,
capital student?
Parentheses, not all student, but all
students.
underscores.
But you need parentheses like this.
Like this?
Because
Let's see what happens and let's run it. I'm down here in the terminal, Python student. I'm going to run this student Python file. It's going to call the student class, and it's going to call this all students method. Let's see what happens. Oh no, self is not defined.
So instantiate a student.
To instantiate a student. What if I just see what this? I don't know if this is going to work. Let's see what happens. No.
you wouldn't need self because you're already just running the function as is. You're not putting anything in.
So I don't need self. Let's see what it says. Student by line 19 module students
Saying
at
that.
all
You're just
students
running the function. You're not putting anything into it. You're running
and
it
missing
off.
one required positional argument, school ID. So I'm looking up here at school ID, so it's missing that. So run it again. Oh no,
You have to instantiate.
self is not defined. There we go. So we have a student object. We have a list of them. Now, what's the requirement? Loading staff and students. Oh, shoot. Loading data. Returns an array of student objects that represent each row. So right now it's not returning anything. So how can we return a student object or an array of student objects?
Return.
You have to set the student array.
So I have to
You
set,
have to put a variable with an array.
where do I,
And the function.
right in
So you're
here?
placing it into something, right after, I mean, yeah, that's fine.
So right here, I'm gonna
Before the for.
student array. And then within here, I can append
Yeah, students, an array,
and
student,
student. Okay.
and then student array.
Where am I gonna return?
That's just depending on the order dictionary that we use to create the student.
You wanted to identify name after students by bracket, so it identifies the key value name.
So right now, you'd be returning an array of ordered dictionaries containing all the data
You're just-
necessary
Yeah,
to create students.
each row you just print out is going to be inside that.
Okay.
You want to identify the key value name. So after student. Inside the parentheses.
Right here.
Students, yes, students. And then you can do bracket, name and string. And then actually grab the key value and just put in the name or the value and add it to the array.
Okay, do I only want the name?
That's all you want to eventually go to school, is a list of the names.
Student objects that represent all the students.
Everything about this.
Everything about the student.
Everything about.
Why can't I just do student? No, return current. Oh. So I've got this, I declared the student array, it's empty. Then I'm, for each like row which corresponds to a student, I'm appending the student to the array. Then I'm returning, after it's all done, I'm breaking out and then returning, I'm just gonna print the array. So I'm down here in my terminal. I ran the Python. So now I've got an array of ordered dictionary. Okay. What if I wanted to, that works.
Would it be wrong to forego the student array variable and just return student array inside of brackets? Would that also return an array?
Return student array. So,
Yeah, really.
instead of declaring that,
Right.
what am I doing down
You're
here?
just return printing. You're return printing student array inside of brackets. Yeah, student array, but the
Like that?
or no. Yeah, or
Returning a student array?
maybe I'm
just
For sure. Yeah, because the first time it would,
Yeah, it
Shoot
was,
through.
yeah. Sorry, I was just experimenting.
all right, let's do this. So we're getting information. We're getting an array of student objects.
We're actually getting an array of ordered dictionaries that contain the information needed to generate student objects.
Okay. So does this not meet the requirements?
I would say that it does.
Okay, how do we go about?
So we have to take that information and pass it into the student initiate and for each element in the year that we are currently doing, we want to create a new student object using that information. Which we can do either there or we can do it
Inside. So I'm initializing a new student, right?
And we're going to pass in.
I guess it won't work with, probably with,
No, you can actually pull it out because you can pull out student bracket, student ID, comma,
student bracket, student, or is it school ID? School ID.
But that should be the first one before you do the double stars.
Oh yeah, like so.
Comma, space, double star student.
Double star student. Let's see what that looks like. I just want to print. This new student object. So what we're doing for each student, we have a dictionary, or key values. And then we're creating a new student by calling the class. And we're extrapolating the school ID, which we need for the first argument. Then we're passing in the rest of the parameters in person info. Let's just see what happens. I'm gonna, down here in the terminal, I'm gonna run Python student.py. Do not print anything. So it didn't print anything. Oh, because I didn't call anything. So you would need, so student, all students.
You need to pass in student.
There we go. So let's call this again. Got multiple arguments.
Well, because by stripping it out, you have to remove it from quad.
From this part, right? We have to remove.
So new student object, or so in that case, in this case, this is where you can pop it off.
This is where you'd be able to pop it off. Yeah. Let's just keep this for the requirements because we're grabbing the data. We have access to that data, and we can loop through that array and access the dictionary, the values. But yeah, that's all. That's really interesting. I like the way that would work.
So in that case, you have to basically just go student underscore ID equals student ID or student.pop student school ID, and pops it off of the dictionary.
And then then have to load it all.
So that pops it off of the.
So let's just keep it like this for now. So we have a student array. It's looping through each student, and it's appending it to this array. And then it's printing the student array. But we don't necessarily need to print it. We just need to return it. So that should work. So now let's go do the same thing, but for staff.
Hey, Tom, a question for you.
Yes. No.
It specifically says in the instructions that this all students method is a class method. Does that require any special formatting or calls, or I'm not exactly sure what that means. I tried to research that, and I thought it required that instead of doing self as the argument, you fed the class name back into it.
Class method. Call. Define class method. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, you're right. What is a class method? What is a class method versus static method?
versus instance method?
Versus class static method. This is where we adjust that, right? Mark this method. Oh, it's just a flag.
Instead of accepting the self parameter, it's a CLS that points back to the class and not a specific instance of the class. For the second paragraph.
This one?
You can't modify object instance state. We can still modify a class state that applies to that. So the point being that in that case, we wouldn't need to instantiate an instance of student to be able to call the.
Okay. Sweet. Interesting. So yeah, you'd put what is like that.
And then it also takes CLS instead of CLS.
Whoa. CLS. Will that change the behavior? Oh, what the hell?
You didn't call it.
Yeah. CLS. Let's run this. So we have this @class method to indicate that this is in fact the next method is a class method. Access to CLS. Can't modify object instance state. So it can't, what I interpret that as, it can't modify
In that
instance
case, you
state.
can call it, I think you can call it student dot all students.
Student.
Without having the very column, the very bottom, and 22. This is big student dot, you don't need to instantiate parentheses.
See what that works. Oh. Oh, it's not printing anything. There we go. Cool. Thanks, Al. Thanks, Ethan.
Yes, sir. Hey, I was curious if instead of CLS in between those parens, if that meant to put the name of the class that it was associated with in there. But I think you've answered my question on that. Thanks.
Class method, CLS naming. I don't know, Python. Parameter naming Python. I don't know. That's pretty much the same thing. Okay. Let's just move on to let's finish this one up.
Yeah.
Then go into, so we're pretty much doing the same thing for staff. So I'm just going to copy this. Instead of all students, I call it all staff. And student reader, I'm going to do staff reader. And then student array, staff array.
And you need to copy the text from the top and you
So up here, I'll need to copy this as well. Instead of students, I'm going to staff. Staff CSV, and just going to change all the nomenclature to correspond to staff. Student. Let's see if this works now. Clear it in the terminal. I'm going to run the staff Python file, run this all staff method, see what we get back. I'm going to have to print something for it to show up. So I'm down here in the terminal. Get out of here. Python staff.py. Age 25, role, principal, employee ID. Cool. There we go. We got loading staff and students. Let's go back to the challenge. Loading staff and students into the school. So it essentially just says within the school init, we're going to be calling the students and staff and then calling that method. Let's see what happens. Let's just, so back in our file, I'm going to open up the student, I'm sorry, the school. And instead of this array, I'm going to call this staff dot all staff. Then student to students or students dot all student.
All students.
Oh, what the hell just happened? Now I'm going to have to import from student, import student, from staff, import staff. Let's create new school. New school. So I just want to see if this actually loads. School. Some high school. And then I'm going to print the new school dot staff as well as the students. So I just added, I'm instantiating, calling staff class, staff, the all student or all staff method within staff, which is returning an array of students or array of staff. Same with the students. Let's run this file. School. There we go. We're getting the staff and the students. Was that everything? Now let's print the staff and the students from the runner file, because this is the main file we're gonna develop our CLI. So we're gonna do Python runner. Whoop, I gotta get in the right directory because I'm currently in classes. My name is CD upper level, ls. Got the runner file. Let's run this. Python runner. Oh no! From classes.school import school. Okay. Classes.school import school. Then it goes into school file. This is from student import student. No module name student.
We need to put a lot in front of student. That goes in the same directory as the file that we importing.
So yes, this dot in front of it tells you to look in the same directory. What was that, Ethan?
So the school and staff. So when runner is importing from something, it then tries to immediately run imports from whatever. So looking for a school in class in the classes folder. There's no second classes folder.
Let's just run this one more time and see what happens. Oh no.
Do the same thing on from dot person import person.
Dot person, import person. So when you import a file, like in a runner, it immediately runs this entire file. So then it comes in here and it immediately runs this entire these two files as well.
So it's running as if you just copied that text on the top into the file, the main file you're running. By putting the dot, it says the directory that the file that we're in, as opposed to
the file that the runner is in, right?
As opposed to the
file that classes is in. Let's run this again and see what happens. There we go. Yeah, I'd recommend reading up or watching like the import. Yeah. Ethan posted an article in Slack yesterday that's pretty helpful. There's also some YouTube videos that like will take 25 minutes to explain specifically what's happening.
Yeah, he was directing the article towards me. I learned about that dot.
Yeah.
Also explain that you want to make sure that your imports are in alphabetical order. I guess it's not necessary, but for proper coding.
For proper coding it is, because then if you've got a list of 20 imports and you're trying to say, oh, I don't need that one, they're not it's easy to scan through and say,
Yeah,
that one.
I also learned that there's a order of operations or order to import your imports in too as well.
Yeah, there's a lot. You can get into the weeds with importing and exporting, not just within Python, but also JavaScript. All right, if we don't have any questions right now, I'm going to go over